Greetings, Dollars. Welcome to another video. So I'm going to do a couple things on this video. This is probably not going to be a short one by any means, but I might put in timestamps. Who knows? Or you can just fast forward to whatever you want to see in the video. But I'm going to do a couple things. The first thing I'm gonna do is show you an updated deck profile of the Scareclaw Kash deck. I already did one for the Tier Element Lunalight deck. That was the other deck I was playing, like in the past format. The second thing I'm gonna do is talk about stuff that you need to look forward to when it comes to the next format and why this is a really good choice. And I guess the last thing I will do is talk about siding patterns and stuff and the types of different sides and main decks that you should be predicated on for the next TCG format that we're going to come into. I'll also be retouching strengths about this deck and how good it is now compared to the last format. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Not really much has changed. I'll talk about the changes at the end, but visas, 6 Scareclaws, about 6 level 3 ones, the 3 right heart. Shout out to Pereira, he hooked me on foreign ones. So all my Scareclaw cards are foreign. Cash Unicorn's now a 2, Sag. I mean, it had to happen. I'm glad it happened. It really didn't affect this deck at all. Rice Heart and Scareclaw. Adventure. I really don't know why people are sleeping on this. This is still a really good engine. And it's probably gonna be really good now next format. Last card, Kurikara. 3 Ray Phobias, 3 Arrivals, same as always. 3 Pressured Planets, Birth, Theosis. Double Thrust. I bumped Talents back to 3. This was the 3rd Unicorn. Triple Right, Faithful Adventure, Draco back. I'll talk about thrust targets now. Or normal spells. Dark Ruler, Terraforming, Rhoda, and the last one I'm gonna show, which is something I'm really surprised people are not catching on, and I feel like people should be trying this card out on their decks now, especially Kashtira players. Monster Reborn. The last 2 cards are Cold By and Twin Saw. Extra deck. Not really anything has changed. Like 3 Lightheart. Even with Mind Hacker gone, you still want to play 3. Like you just win the grind game every time when you resolve multiple of these. If your opponent stops one or like they negate one, you try to get into a second one, and it's just really strong. Double Tryhard, Asa, Dark, Unicorn, Access, Goddess, Baron, Chaos Angel, Big Eye, Erase Heart. Now it's a 1, so now we're at an even playing field with Kashtira. And Astra. Okay, so things to talk about. I guess before we talk about anything, I'll show you my side deck. At least the side deck that I had for now. It's pretty much almost the same side deck as last time, but I'm going to give a lot of explanations. 2 Ash, 2 Bell, 2 Ogres, 3 Drolls. I switched out DD Crow and I'm now playing Imperm. 3 Cosmics. So last format, a lot of people were playing hand traps in their main decks because they wanted to respect Super Heavy Samurai. That deck had a really high combo ceiling. That deck was super ridiculous into playing through, like making really good boards. And like there was a version running around that was doing hand loops with Omega and Dispatter. And people were really, really afraid of that. Um, like, so I'm going to have a few hot takes. Probably they're not going to be the takes that people are going to be lenient on, but I'm going to make them anyway. That argument for Super Heavy Samurai also fell for Dark Worlds when the Dark World structure that came out. But what happened to Dark World? The deck phased out because of two reasons. One, Two Elements was really, really strong, and it was not. It was as strong as Dark World was, so it was really hard to keep up with Two Elements with a deck like Dark World. The second thing that happened to the Dark World was on the next format, Kash was running around, and Kash was really, really strong against Dark World, especially with Shifter running around. So Dark World became a dark horse, and no pun intended. But yeah, the same argument for Super Heavy Samurai, you could have made it for Dark World when Dark World was like a possibility. Because that's a deck that does not play well into, like, that's a deck that's really strong against like board breaker strategies. They just hand loop you and they just do like a lot of things. But Super Heavy Samurai was like a newer deck. It's like a deck that was easier to set up their combos than Dark World. That's why, you know, Scareclaw got banned in the Forbidden Limited list. So it was a deck that people had to respect more, which means that like the board breaker approach was not common. Now we're going into a new format. The format is like not defined by any means. We don't know what's going to be a good deck. So like people are still on the fence whether or not they should main hand traps. So I dedicated my side deck into those hand traps just because since we're going into a very open format, we don't know what you're going to be facing against, but you want something for everything. Like, you can make the argument for evenly instead of cosmics, but the thing about cosmic is like it snipes out floodgates, and we still don't know if floodgates are going to be popular or not. I'm going to make a video on that very, very soon. But I wanted to cover as much ground as possible. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're facing against Labyrinth, you have these, and you have these. Like, these are already 7 cards. That's good for them. If you're playing against Kashtira, you're probably gonna do something like this. Droll is not really that good, but if they start on Prosperity or Planet, you pretty much shut down their turn. And sometimes people just don't respect it enough. And now with Gamma at 1, this is going to be even harder to stop. But if you face against Floodgate monsters, you already main deck the Ruler No More, and you have these. And there's also Cosmic for those Floodgate decks. Like, Ogre is a weird one. I don't know how good this one will be. Droll might be insane. Like, people are writing this card off because Super Heavy Samurai got really hit. But don't be surprised if you see another deck like mine that really just hard loses to draw. I don't have to explain Ash Blossom, and I don't have to explain Ghost Bell. Like, Diddy Crow was there mainly for Gimmick Puppet, but I feel like if you like draw this, and this, you should be fine against Branded. But you know, testing will tell. Your game experiences will tell how popular a deck in a format is. We kind of have to see. So why is this deck good for the next format? I feel like next format is made for a deck like Scareclaw, and it's for a variety of reasons. Like, The first one I'm gonna cover is Tryhard. People just don't know how to play around this card. Like last format, like I played against Purely, I played against Super Heavy Samurai, I played against like Branded, Labyrinth, Kashtira, and a lot of decks just did not know how to deal with this card. Like, um, like I faced a Purely player. The guy had Noir. He was like holding his Noir because he knew that I ran Kirakara. Um, and I got to try hard. It became a stalemate because the Noir cannot do anything to try hard, but I keeping up advantage against my opponent was awkward with the Noir if he had Delicious Memory underneath. Now that's going to be more uncommon, so this is going to be even stronger against them. Like they really just don't have outs, and you cannot Zeus. This monster is unaffected by Zeus, and not only that, you cannot make Zeus with this card on the board unless you summon like unless I have an XYZ and you attack it with Scareclaw, Kashtira, or Super Heavy Samurai Monster or something like that. But yeah, like this is a really strong card, and people just don't know how to play around it. That's like the first consensus I have to bring up when it comes to Scareclaw. The second thing about Scareclaw is it's a one card engine into your win condition, and not only that, you have a one card engine that becomes significantly stronger if you open an extender. Like this deck is really strong, like, and people just haven't caught on yet. This deck can easily OTK as well. This deck has a lot of lines. This deck can break through boards. That's why I'm not doing hand traps in the main deck. That's why I'm doing the board breaker approach with like thrust and talents and like other miscellaneous cards. Like I've always been a firm believer in like the board breaker strategy, but I do citing hand traps because you do have to be cognizant of those decks that really just have a win condition turn 0, or they can just FTK you or some or whatnot. So speaking of hand traps, one hand trap that I'm not playing in my side deck, but you can, and a lot of people still are confused by this, and this is another reason I've been winning with the deck. People think this deck is weak to Dimension Shifter. Like, you can make the argument that I play 4 Reborn spells, and I play like a monster that predicates on reborning monsters, and that's the argument for Shifter. But you really don't lose to Shifter. You have 2 engines that play under Shifter, and they end up giving you interruptions. And like there's a Scareclaw combo that ends up on follow up and an interruption, like through Shifter. And yes, when I mean interruption, I'm talking about the Twin Saw. And so yeah, like people just don't side correctly against this deck. Like, I mean, like you can ask all my opponents who like probably will watch this video, or like all my opponents or people that play on my locals. Like every time I get shifted, I just end on a really strong board regardless, and I just play next turn and I OTK you since shifter is no longer like present. Like the Kashtira matchup was not hard for me at all. A Rise Heart was not an issue, not really a huge issue whatsoever. So that's another reason why this deck is strong. Another really good reason, or another really good thing to talk about this deck is that you don't lose to Dimensional Barrier. I think Dimensional Barrier is going to be really, really strong, depending on what's going to be good in the format. But this is a deck that's immune to Barrier because their win condition are Lick monsters. And not only that, but like Kashtira as an engine is really, really strong without the extra deck. Like it's so ridiculous how strong this engine is. Like people who are writing off Kashtira, I think they need to think twice. I think this deck is still going to be really, really strong, and people who are not respecting it will lose to them, just because this is another shifter deck. But yeah, like that's another thing to take into consideration. Like, it's just, for me, it's just super ridiculous how one card ends on like 4 cards, and you play multiple copies of them. Like, no cap, I can see this card getting limited someday, just because of how strong the potential is. And this is without even talking about Manadium and not talking about like A Hero Lives. We're talking about the Prisma package, because those are other cards that you can also incorporate, that you can do, that make this strategy very, very valuable. I'm going to be asked this. I already know people are going to ask in the comments, why Scareclaw and not Manadium? Like, Manadium is weak to Shifter, is weak to Dimensional Barrier, is weak to there's the Prison Trap card, the Organism one. I think people will play that since Branded and Labyrinth are going to be popular, and that's another card Manadium struggles with. But yeah, another really funny thing is, and I find it extra funny because Kash players were playing this, like they were playing this with set rotation. So people are picking up on what this card does, but people still don't play these people still play into this card. Like, they still keep summoning monsters in defense position, and whenever they flip a floodgate on you, like a summon limit or something weird like that, you just go, okay, right, phobia, pop it. Like, pop your skill drain, pop your whatever. Like, people just don't respect this card. They keep summoning all their monsters in defense position, and it's really good because this makes this card a +2 instead of a +1. And the fact that you have like a 1 card that can get to it is just nuts. And it's not once per turn. People still are phased out about that. And you can also link itself from the main monster zone into the extra monster zone to do that as well. People also don't understand that. Another reason why this card is good at 3. Yeah, like, eventually people will catch on, but I don't see a reason why I don't play Master Reborn in my deck. Like, it's not even because it's an extender. It's because it can also take monsters from your opponent. And, like, if you're a deck that plays Kaijus, or a deck that can get rid of boss monsters very easily, this is a really good card to think over. Because just taking your opponent's Baron, or just taking your opponent's Arise Heart, or just taking your opponent's, like access code, and you do something with it. If you're playing Sky Strikers, this is really, really strong because it can reborn back like your Link monsters, and you just turn them into whatever Link monster you need, like Gary, etc. Yeah, don't sleep on this card. People who are watching this profile, like, listen to me. You won't regret playing this. This deck is still very weak to draw. It still is a bit weak against Nibiru if you don't open like Visas or your adventure cards. You can make the argument of playing more Visas cards. Like, you can play Foolish Burial, which becomes like a 4th copy of Enchantress or a 7th copy of Right. You can play more copies of Visa Starfrost. That way you can try to get into Baron or Chaos Angel before your 5th summon. I thought about playing Ringo Worm and playing playing like other cards, but I really like my main deck, like the way it is. This card is nuts. Honestly, it sucks that it has a way inflated price tag right now, but in a deck like this one, this card is really, really good. And it also has a reborn effect. Who knew? But yeah, I think that's about it. there's not much to cover when it comes to the deck, or the strategy. I already talked about like what should you be doing with board breakers and hand traps. There are two kinds of side decks. They, there are the side decks where you play floodgates or cards for going first, just so you have an advantage over your opponent. And those are the type, and then there are the type of hand traps where you just try to cover as much ground as possible, which is my favorite way to do it. Like I feel like this deck is already really strong. I don't need floodgates to win with this deck. Like I feel like Tryhard itself being a floodgate technically, and a towers monster is like really strong already. Um, like yeah, that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. Keep practicing and keep dueling. Later, guys.